The electoral silence continued in Argentina one day before the open, simultaneous, and mandatory primary elections are scheduled to be held on Sunday. Russian Foreign Minister reports neutralization of new Ukrainian drone attack on Crimea bridge. In Nigeria, Mosque collapses, leaving at least 7 people killed in Zaria. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. A federal judge in Argentina dismissed Friday the police officers involved in the disappearance and death of Santiago Maldonado, which occurred on August 1, 2017. The federal judge of the city of Rawson, Gustavo Leral, dismissed all the officers under investigation for participating in the repressive operation on Route 40, where a road blockade carried out by the Mapuche community in the province of Chubut was evicted. Santiago Maldonado, an activist who was expressing his solidarity with the indigenous cause, disappeared after the events and was later found dead after months of mobilizations demanding its reappearance. The judicial decision benefited the gendarme Emmanuel Echazu, who was accused of the forced disappearance of Maldonado, and the agents Juan Pablo Escola, Víctor Baquila Ocampo, and Marcelo Ferreira, accused of having committed the crimes of damage, abuse of authority, and omission of duties of a public official. The electoral silence continues in Argentina one day before the open, simultaneous, and mandatory primary elections scheduled to be held on Sunday. After the end of the campaign closing activities, the electoral calendar is moving forward as planned for an electoral event that will define the presidential tickets of all parties involved. Expectations are growing among the more than 35 million citizens eligible to vote, while the distribution of electoral material has already begun. After Sunday's primary election, each political space will finally decide its official candidate for the general elections to be held in October 2022. Let's review the general points concerning the steps to follow this Sunday, August 13, in Argentina.
August 13th, open primary elections will be held for each political force to decide its candidates for president and vice president, as well as 19 Mercosur parliamentarians per district, 24 Mercosur parliamentarians per regional district, 130 deputies at a national level, and 24 national senators in 8 provinces. There will be an estimated 17,431 polling places nationwide, 106,659 ballot boxes at national level, and 2,127 ballot boxes for foreign voters in Buenos Aires province. The polling centers will be available from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. local time. Additionally, over 1,000 digital mail stations will be open nationwide for electronic voting after polling stations close. It is estimated that at least 35,403,178 Argentines are being called to cast their votes at the polls this Sunday. For Argentines, Together for Change is the strongest party, and according to surveys and polls, it has the highest intention of votes at the present time.
Malaysia's ruling coalition retained control of 3 of the 6 disputed states in regional elections held on Saturday. Although these local elections have no direct impact at the federal level, opposition sectors consider it an early referendum on the government of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Election Commission data show that Anwar's Progressive Alliance had been re-elected in 3 of the states it had held prior to Saturday's vote, including Malaysia's richest state, Selangor. Meanwhile, the opposition bloc, led by former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, retained control of 3 states while winning the backing of the country's ending Muslim majority. Experts anticipated government stability to increase after these elections, despite advances by the country's oppositions.
Well, we always expect some positive changes with every new leader that comes in. Formerly it was by a few leaders, and now only you see all the corruption and all kinds of things. Hopefully this gentleman, Anwar Ibrahim, of course we would like to give him a chance to prove his worthiness, expecting progress and positivity changes for the country.
Because this government is still young, we want to see it grow more in time. We see a lot of improvement and changes, because I believe he can bring the country to progress in much better way, which we are hoping and everybody is hoping would be.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Around 3,000 police agents and soldiers intervened on Friday in Ecuador's most dangerous penitentiary amid states of exception declared for all prisons in the country. The forces carried out an inspection at the Electoral penitentiary in Guayaquil, where they reportedly found grenades and 740 bullets and 139 cell phones and 6 wireless radios, together with more than 23 kilos of drugs, a pool with fish, and a farm for dogs and chickens. The search took place in the midst of a state of exception, which is enforced in the country's prison and which has facilitated the joint action of the military and the police inside these centers. In Ecuador, 6 people were arrested for the assassination of Fernando Villavicencio, and the electoral calendar continues under a state of emergency. Ecuador's public prosecutor's office has filed charges against the 6 men arrested for the alleged involvement in the murder on Wednesday of presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. In a hearing, the public prosecutor's office presented 22 elements of conviction that could support the prosecution of these individuals, including evidence from the crime scene and searches carried out, as well as statements from witnesses to the attack that claim Villavicencio life after an alleged rally in the Ecuadorian capital, Quito. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs reported the neutralization of a Ukrainian drone attack on the Crimea bridge. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova assured that Kiev's attempt against civilian infrastructure will not go unanswered. Zakharova said that the bridge in Crimea is a civilian infrastructure and that the attacks on it are unacceptable, describing them as terrorists. The Russian official also stressed that the Ukrainian armed forces attacks are an attempt to take revenge on civilians as a result of their military failures. She detailed that the Crimea region was subjected to a massive attack by at least 20 Ukrainian drones, 14 of which were destroyed by the air defense, while 6 were suppressed by the electronic devices. The Russian government reported that several ships of the Northern Fleet went out to the open sea to conduct operations in the Arctic zone. The Russian Defense Ministry announced on Friday that command staff trainees on troops and forces management started the same day. The exercises rehearsed variants of actions to protect Russia's sovereignty in the water of Northern Sea route. In this context, the military agency explained that the crew took off from airfields placed in Novaya Zemlya and Francisco Jose Land archipelagos, where they practiced interaction with ships. And in this context, authorities reported that the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu inspected the Russian contingent deployed in the Arctic zone on Saturday. The Russian defense minister traveled to react to inspect troops deployed in a region where Moscow has threatened its military apparatus in recent years. Shoigu, along with the Director General of the Russian State Corporation Rosatom, Alexei Lishakov, flew over the central Russian nuclear test sites used as a nuclear test site between 1954 and 1990. He also inspected the remote Arctic garrison of the Northern Fleet and assessed the performance of special detachments deployed in the New Zemlya archipelago and checked the progress of several social infrastructure reconstruction works in the settlement of Belusha Guba. In China, floods are causing damages to rice and maize crops in the northern grain belt. Traders and analysts fear the consequences of the meteorological phenomena on the economy, as small rains are forecast, which threaten to increase inflationary pressures, and analysts estimate that the floods could reduce rice production by 3 to 5% in the affected areas. Traders and producers said that it's not possible to estimate the extent of the damage, which will only be known after the flood waters recede. Meanwhile, in northern China, 2 people died, 16 are missing, and 23,000 had to be evacuated on Saturday morning due to the flash floods and mudslides in the Jilin province. Heavy rains and flood caused first by Typhoon Doksuri and then by the recently arrived Typhoon Kanun have resulted in damage worth millions, from thousands of hectares of destroyed crops to thousands of collapsed houses. The record rains that have recently lashed northern China have left a total of at least 78 people dead, according to a report released by the authorities. Beijing alone reported 33 deaths, while the neighboring province of Hebei reported 29 deaths. Meanwhile, rescue teams continue the search and rescue of missing people, while 1,000 officials start cleaning and disinfection tasks. Hundreds of South Korean activists gathered in central Seoul on Friday to protest against Japan's plan to release into the ocean treated radioactive water from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant. According to Japanese government sources, the country plans to start releasing the water into the ocean as early as late August. Japan's nuclear regulator granted approval of plant operator Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings (TEPCO) to start releasing the water. Japan and the International Atomic Energy Agency said the operation is safe, but nearby countries fear may contaminate food. A massive earthquake and tsunami destroyed the Fukushima plant's cooling system in 2011, causing 3 reactors to melt and contaminate their cooling water. TEPCO has been collecting, filtering, and storing the water in hundreds of tanks, which will reach their capacity in early 2024. On Friday, heavy rains hit Myanmar, leaving at least 5 people dead and 48,000 people evacuated due to the flooding. The Myanmar Meteorological Service reported that the level of the Bago River was expected to start receding in the next few hours. Hundreds of victims spent the night in a monastery in the city of Bago, northeast of Yangon, waiting for the floods to stop. The Ministry of Social Welfare Relief and Resettlement is involved in providing necessary food and drinking water to the victims. Burma experiences heavy rains every year at the same time, but the past few weeks have been seeing extreme water events around the world, exacerbating, according to scientists, by climate change. In Morocco, a sandstorm surprised the citizens of Marrakech City on the Atlantic coast. The World Meteorological Organization reported that this type of weather storm could bring serious environmental impacts. The intense winds oscillated over 85 kilometers per hour, while temperatures were about 46 Celsius degrees. This kind of events happen when intense winds carry large amounts of dust and sand from dry soils without any vegetation covering. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, sub-stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's more recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. 7 people died in Zaria when part of a mosque collapsed in Zaria city. According to official information, the incident occurred on Friday afternoon when a group of hundreds of worshippers were performing prayers in the central mosque of the city. Authorities confirmed that so far the exact number of wounded is unknown. In this regard, the religious leadership reported that in this situation, the prayers will be held in the vicinity of the enclosure until further notice. According to the Emirates directive, the funeral prayer for the 7 victims of the incident was held at 8:30 p.m. local time at his palace. On Friday in Niger, thousands of coup supporters rallied near a French military base, a day after West African leaders said that they would take action as part of their efforts to reinstate the country's supposed leader. Protesters near the base on the outskirts of the capital Niamey shouted, "Down with France, down with ECOWAS," in reference to the Economic Community of West African States, which on Thursday approved the deployment of standby force to restore constitutional order. Many demonstrators waved Russian and Niger flags and yelled their support for the country's new strongman, General Abdurrahmane Tiani. Protesters also projected the presence of French troops and said ECOWAS decisions are being manipulated by France. Niger's new leader scrapped defense agreements with France last week, while hostile protests outside the French embassy in Niamey on July 30 prompted Paris to evacuate citizens. In Niger, the construction of the $800 million Candji hydroelectric project has been halted by the Chinese contractor Hersuba Group, which claimed that most of its funds have been frozen due to recurring sanctions after the coup. In a letter dated 7 August, the group said it would halt operations and lay off the workforce, adding that they will redeploy workers again if finances are secured. The dam, upon completion, is expected to boost the country's grid by 50%. Niger's population has experienced a vast lack of electricity, with only 4.3 million people having access to energy, as 90% of the population uses food as a store of energy. The recent sanctions by the Regional Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has crippled Niger's economy. The dam was expected to be completed in March 2026 and produce over 130 megawatts of electricity that will be distributed both internally and in the neighboring countries. The government of Sudan reversed the Ministry of Energy decision to raise fuel prices in the country. The government detailed that the conflict situation in the country has uninterrupted most of the public services, especially in hospitals, and has also generated shortages of food, basic products, and fuel. In this context, according to authorities, the cost increase would affect the population even more. They also pointed out that the price increase was made unilaterally without the approval of the Treasury Department and without the evaluation of the Council of Ministers. In addition, the suspension of salary of public employees still persists due to the interruption of payment of state agencies and the paralyzation of banks, so that the government has been unable to pay the salary of some 859,000 civil servants. In Israel, the number of Palestinian inmates protesting against their administrative detention raised to 13. Some 1,132 people, including 18 minors, are locked up under Israeli law, used to arrest Palestinians for renewable intervals ranging from 3 to 6 months, on the basis of undisclosed evidence and even without access to a defense lawyer. Let us recall that since the beginning of the year, some 60 Palestinian prisoners have refused to appear before Israeli military courts. However, numerous detainees held under the measure have begun hunger strikes for an indefinite period of time to demand their immediate release from Israeli forces. On Saturday, the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand is set to enter the semi-finals. The 4 matches for the football tournament's last 8 phase will be played on August 15 and August 16. Substitute Salma Barawale scored an extra-time winner to give Spain a nervy 2-1 quarter-final victory over the Netherlands, while Sweden held out against a Japanese flyback to beat the 2011 champions 2-1. Australia beat France 7-6 in a thrilling penalty shootout in the quarterfinals, while England came back from a goal down to the beaten impressing Colombian side 2-1. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.